Social Psychology, Why We Act the Way We Do. Written and published by C.Irmici. Feel free to subscribe for more content. Now let's get into the book. Introduction. Understanding Social Psychology, the Science of Human Interaction. Why do people act the way they do? What influences our choices, behaviors, and interactions with others? Social psychology, the scientific study of how individuals think, feel, and behave in social contexts, holds the key to answering these questions. From the subtle ways we conform to societal norms, to the powerful influence of group dynamics, social psychology provides valuable insights into the hidden forces that shape our daily lives. Our perception of others, our relationships, the groups we belong to, and even the emotions we experience are all guided by social psychological principles, often without us realizing it. This book will explore the fascinating mechanisms behind human interaction. We'll uncover why we follow the crowd, how our attitudes are formed and changed, what drives human connection, and even why people sometimes act aggressively or altruistically. By understanding these underlying forces, we can better navigate our personal and professional lives and contribute to building a more harmonious society. The field of social psychology offers powerful tools for self-awareness and growth, but more importantly, it sheds light on how we can improve our relationships, work environments, and communities. Through the following chapters, we'll delve into key topics such as social influence, identity, stereotypes, and emotions, helping you make sense of why we act the way we do. This journey will reveal the science behind our social world, empowering you to see familiar interactions through a new lens and inspiring positive change in your daily interactions. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Influence of Social Perception. How we see others and how it shapes our behavior. Imagine walking into a crowded room for the first time. Without saying a word, you're already making judgments about the people around you. Some might seem friendly, others distant. But where do these instant perceptions come from, and how do they affect our behavior? Social perception refers to how we form impressions of and make inferences about other people. These perceptions are influenced by many factors, including past experiences, cultural background, stereotypes, and even the context of the situation. Every day we rely on these cues to navigate our social world, often without conscious thought. At the core of social perception is the fundamental attribution error, our tendency to overemphasize personality traits when explaining someone's behavior, while underestimating situational factors. For example, if someone cuts you off in traffic, you're more likely to think they're rude or aggressive, rather than considering they might be in a rush for an emergency. This bias shapes not just how we view others but also how we interact with them. Another powerful concept is schemas, mental frameworks that help us organize information. These are shortcuts our brains use to quickly interpret the world around us. For instance, if you see someone in a doctor's coat, you immediately associate them with knowledge, authority, and trustworthiness, even before knowing them personally. While schemas are helpful, they can also lead to stereotyping, which oversimplifies complex individuals and situations. Then there's the halo effect, where our overall impression of someone influences how we perceive their specific traits. If we think someone is likable, we're more likely to attribute other positive characteristics to them, such as intelligence or competence. This can significantly impact how we treat others, often without realizing it. Nonverbal cues also play a critical role in social perception. Our body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, and even our posture send signals to others, often communicating more than words. A smile, for example, can convey warmth and friendliness, while crossed arms might signal defensiveness or discomfort. We constantly pick up on these nonverbal signals, shaping how we interact with those around us. The way we perceive others also ties into self-fulfilling prophecies. When we have certain expectations about someone, our behavior toward them can influence how they act, confirming our original perception. For instance, if a teacher believes a student is gifted, they may unconsciously provide more encouragement, leading the student to perform better. This reinforces the teacher's belief, even though their expectations shape the outcome. Chapter 2. The Power of Social Influence. Why we follow the crowd, conformity, compliance, and obedience. Have you ever found yourself agreeing with a group, even though you felt unsure or hesitant. Or maybe you've followed instructions from an authority figure that didn't quite sit right with you. These experiences illustrate the powerful pull of social influence, the subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, pressures we feel to fit in, follow directions, and adjust our behavior to align with others. Social influence operates through three primary mechanisms: conformity, compliance, and obedience. Each plays a distinct role in shaping how we act in social settings, and understanding these forces can help explain why we often follow the crowd, even when we know better. Conformity, the pressure to fit in. Conformity is the tendency to change our behavior, beliefs, or attitudes to match those of a group. It's one of the most fundamental aspects of human interaction, driven by our desire to be liked, accepted, and seen as part of the group. Psychologist Solomon Asch's famous experiments in the 1950s demonstrated how easily we conform. Participants were asked to judge the length of lines on a card, a simple task with obvious answers. But when the group gave clearly wrong answers, most individuals conformed, agreeing with the group even when they knew it was incorrect. There are two main reasons people conform. Normative social influence: we want to be liked or avoid standing out. Going along with the group makes us feel accepted and avoid social rejection. Informational social influence: we assume the group knows better. If many people hold a certain belief or act in a particular way, we assume they have knowledge or insight that we don't. The power of conformity can be seen everywhere, from fashion trends and social media behavior to how people vote or form opinions about current events. Conformity is not always negative, but it can lead to groupthink, where the desire for harmony or conformity in a group results in irrational or poor decision-making. Compliance, yielding to requests. Compliance refers to changing our behavior in response to a direct request, even when we don't necessarily agree with it. People comply with requests for various reasons, such as social norms, politeness, or perceived authority. Researchers have studied techniques that can significantly increase compliance, even when the requests are irrational or inconvenient. Some well-known techniques include the foot in the door technique. This involves getting someone to agree to a small request first, making it more likely they'll agree to a larger request later. For instance, asking someone to sign a small petition before asking for a donation works because it makes them feel consistent in their behavior. The door-in-the-face technique. This is the opposite, starting with an unreasonable request that's likely to be rejected, then following it with a more reasonable request. People often agree to the second, smaller request because they feel guilty or obligated after refusing the first. Compliance plays a big role in everyday interactions, from how we respond to a salesperson to how we handle requests from friends or colleagues. The pressure to comply can sometimes lead us to do things we'd rather not, simply to avoid discomfort or maintain social harmony. Obedience, following authority. Obedience is the most extreme form of social influence, involving following direct orders from an authority figure, even when it goes against our personal values or judgment. One of the most famous studies on obedience is Stanley Milgram's experiment, conducted in the 1960s. Participants were instructed to deliver electric shocks to a learner whenever they made a mistake, increasing the shock levels with each error. Despite hearing the learner's faked cries of pain, many participants continued to obey the authority figure's instructions, even when they believed they were causing real harm. Milgram's findings showed how far people would go in obeying authority, even when it conflicted with their conscience. This obedience to authority is often driven by a sense of duty or fear of consequences. It's a key factor in understanding how ordinary people can commit extraordinary acts, both good and bad, under the influence of a powerful leader or institution. The power of social influence in everyday life. Conformity, compliance, and obedience shape much of our social behavior, often without us realizing it. From the clothes we wear and the opinions we share to the laws we follow and the leaders we obey, these forces are constantly at play in our lives. However, while social influence can help maintain order and cohesion, it also has the potential to lead to harmful behaviors or decisions. Recognizing the power of these forces can help us make more conscious choices, whether it's resisting peer pressure, questioning authority, or thinking critically about the requests we receive. In understanding social influence, we also gain insight into how we can influence others more effectively and ethically. The key lies in striking a balance between being open to social input and maintaining our personal values and judgments. Chapter 3: The Role of Social Identity. How group membership affects our behavior and beliefs. Humans are inherently social beings, and much of our identity is tied to the groups we belong to. Whether it's our family, friends, nationality, or even the sports teams we support, our social identities shape how we see ourselves and how we interact with others. But what is social identity and how does it influence our behavior? Social identity theory, developed by psychologists Henri Tajfel and John Turner, explains how individuals define themselves based on their group memberships. These groups, whether they're based on race, religion, gender, profession, or hobbies, provide us with a sense of belonging and help us form our self-concept. However, group membership also affects how we perceive others and how we behave toward those inside and outside our group. The in-group and out-group dynamics. One of the central aspects of social identity is the distinction between in-groups, the groups we belong to, and out-groups, groups we don't belong to. In-group favoritism is the tendency to view members of our own group in a more favorable light, while often holding negative or neutral views of those in the out-group. This can lead to group cohesion but also to social divisions. Tajfel's minimal group experiments famously demonstrated how quickly and easily people form in-group bias. In these studies, participants were randomly assigned to groups based on arbitrary criteria, such as preferences for certain paintings. Despite the meaningless nature of these groupings, participants still displayed favoritism toward their in-group, allocating more resources to their group and displaying bias against the outgroup. This shows how quickly social identity can shape behavior, even in trivial contexts. This in-group versus out-group dynamic is not just a social curiosity, it has profound implications in everyday life. Whether it's supporting a political party, identifying with a sports team, or adhering to national or cultural identity, these groupings often influence how we treat others, especially those we perceive as different. Stereotypes and social identity. Our social identities often come with certain stereotypes, generalized beliefs about the characteristics of people based on their group membership. While stereotypes can be positive, e.g., believing all members of a particular group are hardworking, they often lead to oversimplification and prejudice. When we categorize others based on group identity, we may fail to see them as individuals, focusing instead on assumed group characteristics. The outgroup homogeneity effect is another key concept related to social identity. It refers to the tendency to see members of the outgroup as more similar to each other than they really are. For instance, members of an ethnic majority might perceive individuals from a minority group as all alike, while seeing members of their own group as more diverse. This bias can reinforce stereotypes and make it easier to marginalize or discriminate against outgroup members. Social identity and self-esteem. Social identity also plays a crucial role in shaping our self-esteem. We often derive pride and confidence from our group affiliations, which can boost our sense of self-worth. However, when our group identity is threatened, our self-esteem can suffer. To protect or enhance their self-esteem, individuals may engage in social comparison, where they compare their in-group to out-groups. If the comparison is favorable, it boosts self-esteem. If it's unfavorable, individuals may experience feelings of frustration or anger, potentially leading to conflict or hostility between groups. In some cases, individuals seek to improve their social identity by emphasizing the positive aspects of their group or devaluing the outgroup. This process, called positive distinctiveness, reinforces the notion that our group is better, often at the expense of others. Social identity in modern society. The impact of social identity can be seen across many areas of life, from national pride to workplace dynamics. In politics, social identity often drives partisan loyalty, where individuals strongly identify with a political party and view opposing parties as inherently wrong or inferior. This can polarize societies, making cooperation and understanding between different groups more challenging. In the workplace, social identity can manifest through professional groups, departments, or even hierarchies within a company. For instance, Employees may identify with their specific team or division, sometimes creating divisions or rivalries between departments. Recognizing how social identity affects workplace relationships can help foster more collaboration and reduce conflict. Social identity can also play a powerful role in efforts for social change. When people strongly identify with a particular cause, such as environmental activism, civil rights, or gender equality, they are more likely to take collective action to support that cause. Social movements often rely on creating a shared sense of identity among their supporters to generate momentum and solidarity. Challenges and opportunities. While social identity can strengthen bonds and provide individuals with a sense of belonging, it can also create barriers between groups. These divisions can lead to prejudice, discrimination, and even conflict, as individuals prioritize their in-group over the out-group. However, there are ways to overcome these challenges. The contact hypothesis, proposed by psychologist Gordon Allport, suggests that under the right conditions, direct interaction between members of different groups can reduce prejudice. When people from different social identities come together in cooperative settings, they are more likely to see each other as individuals, rather than as representatives of an entire group. This can break down stereotypes and promote understanding. Additionally, fostering superordinate identities that encompass multiple groups, can reduce division. For example, emphasizing a shared national identity or common humanity can encourage cooperation between people from different backgrounds. When individuals focus on what unites them rather than what divides them, they are more likely to engage in constructive social interactions. Social identity is a fundamental aspect of human behavior, influencing how we see ourselves and others. From the smallest group dynamics to large-scale social movements, our group memberships shape our beliefs, behaviors, and interactions in powerful ways. While social identity can foster belonging and unity, it can also lead to division and conflict. By becoming more aware of the role social identity plays in our lives, we can begin to challenge our biases and work toward more inclusive and cooperative relationships, both within our groups and across them. Understanding and managing social identity is key to building stronger, more harmonious societies. Chapter 4: Attitudes and Persuasion. How our beliefs form and how they can be changed. Every day we encounter countless messages, opinions, and arguments. Some we agree with, others we don't. But why do we hold the attitudes we do, and how can they be influenced? Social psychology reveals that our attitudes are more than just random beliefs. They are shaped by our experiences, social context, and the persuasive messages we encounter. At its core, an attitude is a psychological tendency expressed by evaluating something with a degree of favor or disfavor. Whether it's our opinion on climate change, our favorite type of food, or even our political stance, attitudes influence how we see the world and how we behave within it. Understanding how these attitudes are formed and, more importantly, how they can be changed, opens the door to deeper insights about human behavior. How attitudes are formed. Attitudes are not static, they are the product of a variety of influences. Early in life, family, friends, and cultural norms play a significant role in shaping our core beliefs. We absorb attitudes from those around us, often without much reflection, simply by observing their behaviors and opinions. For instance, children often adopt political or religious views similar to their parents, not through formal instruction, but through socialization. Another way attitudes develop is through direct experience. When we interact with something personally, our experience shapes how we feel about it. Imagine you try a new cuisine for the first time and enjoy it. That positive experience is likely to shape your attitude toward that type of food in the future. Positive or negative personal encounters have a strong impact on how our attitudes evolve. Moreover, attitudes can be formed through media exposure and cultural narratives. Advertisements, news outlets, and social media constantly influence the way we think and feel about various subjects. Over time, these messages contribute to shaping public opinion and can shift our personal attitudes, even if we don't notice it happening. Persuasion, changing minds. While attitudes can be deeply ingrained, they are not fixed. Persuasion, the process of changing someone's attitude through communication, is a key area of study in social psychology. We are constantly subjected to persuasive attempts, from political campaigns to marketing strategies to conversations with friends trying to change our minds. One of the most well-known models of persuasion is the elaboration likelihood model, ELM. This model suggests there are two main routes to persuasion, the central route and the peripheral route. The central route to persuasion involves careful and thoughtful consideration of the arguments presented. When we are highly motivated and able to think critically, we use this route. For example, when deciding who to vote for in an election, you might read detailed policy proposals, weigh pros and cons, and make a rational decision based on evidence. Persuasion through this route tends to lead to more enduring attitude change because it's rooted in logical reasoning. The peripheral route, on the other hand, relies on superficial cues, such as the attractiveness or charisma of the speaker, emotional appeals, or simple slogans. This route is often used when we are less motivated to think deeply, such as when watching a commercial or casually browsing social media. Persuasion through the peripheral route may be effective in the short term, but it often results in less stable attitude change. Advertisers, political strategists, and influencers rely on both routes depending on the context and audience. Understanding these mechanisms can help us recognize when we are being persuaded and whether we are being influenced by genuine arguments or superficial factors. Cognitive dissonance, when attitudes clash with actions. One of the most fascinating concepts in social psychology is cognitive dissonance, the discomfort we feel when our attitudes and behaviors are inconsistent. For example, imagine you see yourself as someone who values health, but you find yourself eating junk food regularly. This mismatch creates internal tension because your actions don't align with your beliefs. People are motivated to reduce this dissonance by either changing their behavior or altering their attitudes. In the case of unhealthy eating, you might start exercising more or justify the junk food by telling yourself it's just a treat. This process highlights how flexible attitudes can be and how we often reshape our beliefs to fit our actions rather than the other way around. Cognitive dissonance is a powerful force because it explains why we sometimes resist changing our attitudes, even in the face of convincing evidence. It's easier to justify our behavior than to confront the discomfort of inconsistency. This mechanism also explains why people often cling to their beliefs, even when those beliefs are challenged by facts or logical arguments. Social influence on attitude change. Our social environment plays a critical role in shaping and reshaping our attitudes. Peer groups, social media, and cultural trends exert subtle pressures on us to conform to popular opinions. When the majority of people around us hold a particular belief, we are more likely to adopt it ourselves, either out of a desire to fit in or because we assume the majority must be right. This social pressure is particularly strong when it comes to controversial or divisive issues. People often experience normative influence, where they change their public behavior to match the group's expectations, even if their private beliefs remain unchanged. Over time, however, consistent exposure to a particular view can lead to genuine attitude change. The spread of ideas in today's digital world has only amplified this phenomenon. Social media algorithms feed us content that aligns with our existing attitudes, reinforcing our beliefs and making it more difficult to encounter diverse perspectives. This echo chamber effect can entrench our views and make persuasion more challenging, as we become less open to new information. The ethics of persuasion. Persuasion is a powerful tool, but it also comes with ethical considerations. Persuaders, whether they are marketers, politicians, or influencers, must decide how far they are willing to go to change someone's mind. Manipulating emotions, distorting facts, or using fear tactics can be effective in swaying opinions, but it raises questions about the responsibility of those who seek to influence. Ethical persuasion respects the autonomy of the individual, providing them with the information they need to make informed decisions. It relies on transparency and honest communication, rather than coercion or manipulation. As consumers of information, we must also be vigilant, questioning the motives behind persuasive messages and seeking out diverse perspectives. Conclusion: navigating attitudes and influence. Our attitudes guide much of our behavior, but they are not set in stone. They are shaped by our experiences, social interactions, and the persuasive messages we encounter every day. Understanding how attitudes form and change can help us navigate the complex social world we live in, making us more aware of when we are being influenced, and how we can influence others ethically. Whether we're seeking to change our own attitudes or persuade someone else, the key lies in critical thinking, open-mindedness, and the ability to recognize the forces at play in shaping our beliefs. By staying mindful of how and why we form certain attitudes, we can make more informed decisions and engage in more thoughtful social interactions. Chapter 5: The Psychology of Relationships. Attraction, Love, and Social Bonds. What drives human connection? Human relationships are at the core of our lives, shaping who we are and how we experience the world. From friendships and family ties to romantic love, the psychology of relationships delves into why we connect with certain people, how those bonds form, and what makes relationships last or fall apart. Understanding these dynamics reveals much about the human need for connection, support, and intimacy. Attraction. What draws us to others? Attraction, the first step in any relationship, is often influenced by factors we don't fully recognize. It goes far beyond physical appearance. While many assume that chemistry or physical attraction is the primary driver, research suggests that proximity, similarity, and mutual interest are more critical in determining who we connect with. Proximity plays a surprisingly large role in attraction. Psychologists have long observed the mere exposure effect, where repeated contact with a person increases our likelihood of developing a positive impression of them. This is why many relationships, whether romantic or platonic, often begin in shared environments like schools, workplaces, or neighborhoods. The more we see and interact with someone, the more comfortable and familiar they become, making it easier to form a bond. Similarity is another key factor. We tend to be drawn to people who share our values, interests, and background. This birds of a feather effect is not just about having common hobbies or opinions. It reflects deeper psychological needs for validation and belonging. When someone mirrors our own beliefs or life experiences, we feel understood and accepted. Similarity creates a sense of ease and connection that can lay the foundation for a lasting relationship. But attraction isn't purely logical. Emotional factors also play a significant role. We are drawn to those who show interest in us and make us feel good about ourselves. When someone gives us attention, listens to us, and shows genuine care, it taps into a core human need for affirmation and validation. This positive reinforcement strengthens the initial attraction and builds trust. The development of love. While attraction is the starting point, love is where the deeper, more complex emotions take root. Psychologists have long debated what love really is, and though it's hard to define, there are several key theories about how love develops. One influential theory is Robert Sternberg's triangular theory of love, which breaks love into three components: intimacy, passion, and commitment. Intimacy refers to feelings of closeness and emotional connection. Passion involves physical and emotional arousal, and commitment is the decision to maintain the relationship over time. According to Sternberg, different combinations of these components lead to different types of love. For instance, a relationship with only passion might be infatuation, while one with both intimacy and commitment but little passion might represent companionate love, often seen in long-term partnerships. Romantic love, particularly in its early stages, is often marked by intense passion and emotional highs. Psychologically, this is linked to the brain's reward system, where neurotransmitters like dopamine flood the brain, creating a sense of euphoria. This is why new love can feel so exhilarating and consuming. However, as relationships mature, the initial passion tends to stabilize, making way for deeper emotional intimacy and commitment. While the honeymoon phase may fade, the strength of the bond grows as trust, shared experiences, and emotional vulnerability deepen the connection. Attachment styles. How we connect. Another critical factor in relationships is how we attach to others. Psychologists have identified attachment styles, originally studied in children, that describe how people form bonds and handle emotional intimacy in adulthood. There are three primary attachment styles. Secure attachment. People with a secure attachment style feel comfortable with intimacy and depend on others while maintaining their independence. They tend to form healthy, balanced relationships where both partners feel valued and supported. Anxious attachment. Those with an anxious attachment style often crave closeness but fear rejection. They may become overly dependent on their partner, constantly seeking reassurance, and may struggle with trust or jealousy. Avoidant attachment. People with an avoidant attachment style may struggle with intimacy and prefer emotional distance. They often value independence over closeness and may have difficulty relying on or opening up to others. These attachment styles are shaped by early experiences with caregivers but can evolve over time. Understanding your own attachment style and that of your partner or friends can offer valuable insights into the dynamics of your relationships. It can also help explain why some relationships feel easy and natural, while others are filled with tension or insecurity. Maintaining strong relationships. Once formed, relationships require nurturing to thrive. Emotional support, communication, and shared experiences are all vital in keeping a relationship healthy. One of the biggest factors in the success of any relationship is communication. Open, honest conversations allow partners or friends to resolve conflicts, express their needs, and feel understood. Psychologist John Gottman's research on married couples reveals that the way people handle conflict is a key predictor of relationship success. Gottman identified behaviors he calls the four horsemen: criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling, that often signal the breakdown of a relationship. In contrast, successful couples show mutual respect, the ability to compromise, and a willingness to repair emotional rifts. Beyond communication, empathy is essential. Understanding the feelings and perspectives of others helps build trust and emotional closeness. In close relationships, the ability to offer empathy during both the highs and lows is crucial to maintaining emotional bonds. Another key to lasting relationships is mutual support, being there for each other in times of need. Emotional and practical support can deepen the bond, creating a sense of shared purpose and partnership. This mutual reliance fosters not only intimacy but also resilience, helping relationships weather life's challenges. The challenges of modern relationships. Modern relationships face unique challenges, particularly in a digital age where communication is constant but often superficial. Social media and dating apps have changed how we connect with others, sometimes making it easier to meet people, but also complicating the way we form deep, lasting bonds. Online interactions can blur the lines between genuine connection and casual acquaintance, making it harder to build meaningful relationships. Additionally, the abundance of options in online dating can lead to choice overload, where individuals struggle to commit or invest in a relationship because they are constantly comparing their partner to other potential matches. Another modern challenge is the changing nature of work-life balance. With demanding jobs, increased mobility, and often long distances separating loved ones, maintaining strong relationships requires conscious effort. People must actively work to carve out time for each other, communicate regularly, and build trust despite physical separation. The foundations of human connection. Relationships, whether romantic or platonic, are among the most fulfilling aspects of human life. They provide us with support, joy, and a sense of belonging. Understanding the psychological underpinnings of attraction, love, and social bonds helps us better navigate these connections, making us more aware of what drives our behaviors and how we can nurture our relationships. At the core of any successful relationship is empathy, trust, and mutual respect. By understanding how these factors come into play, and recognizing the patterns that might challenge our relationships, we can build stronger, more meaningful connections with those around us. Chapter 6: Aggression and Altruism. The dark and light sides of human nature. Why we hurt or help others. Human behavior is complex, marked by both acts of kindness and moments of aggression. While we may feel deep empathy and compassion for others at times, we are also capable of anger, hostility, and violence. What drives us to hurt or help one another? Understanding these two seemingly opposing forces, aggression and altruism, helps us better grasp the full spectrum of human nature. The roots of aggression. Aggression, defined as behavior intended to harm or injure another person, has long intrigued psychologists. It can manifest in many forms, from physical violence to verbal insults or social exclusion. The reasons behind aggression are varied, influenced by biological, psychological, and social factors. Biologically, humans are wired for survival, and aggression has historically played a role in protecting resources, defending against threats, and establishing dominance. The brain's limbic system, particularly the amygdala, is involved in emotional responses like fear and aggression, while hormones such as testosterone have been linked to increased aggressive tendencies. However, biology alone cannot fully explain why people act aggressively. Social and environmental factors are equally important. Frustration often triggers aggression, as psychologist John Dollard proposed in his frustration-aggression hypothesis. When people are blocked from achieving a goal or feel unfairly treated, they may lash out. This can range from road rage when stuck in traffic to workplace aggression when someone feels overlooked for a promotion. Situations of high stress, competition, or social conflict also increase the likelihood of aggression. For example, in environments where resources are scarce or inequality is rampant, people may resort to violence or hostility to assert control. Additionally, exposure to violent media or environments where aggression is normalized can desensitize individuals, making aggressive behavior seem more acceptable. But aggression is not just about losing control in heated moments. In some cases, it is premeditated and strategic. Instrumental aggression, as it's called, is goal-oriented and used as a means to an end, whether it's climbing the social ladder, gaining power, or punishing someone perceived as a threat. Aggression, while sometimes framed as a natural part of human behavior, is not inevitable. Our environment and upbringing heavily influence whether we express aggression or manage conflict in healthier ways. Factors like supportive family structures, education, and societal values around cooperation and conflict resolution can reduce the likelihood of aggressive behavior. The power of altruism. On the opposite side of the spectrum is altruism, selfless behavior intended to benefit others without personal gain. Altruism is seen in acts of kindness, generosity, and compassion. But what motivates someone to help others, even when there is no direct benefit to themselves, or when helping might even come at a cost? Some argue that altruism is rooted in our evolutionary past. Kin selection is one explanation for why we help others, especially family members. From an evolutionary standpoint, helping those who share our genetic material increases the chances of passing on our genes. This may explain why people often feel a strong obligation to care for close relatives. However, altruism extends far beyond family ties. Psychologists have identified the concept of reciprocal altruism, the idea that helping others increases the likelihood that they will help us in return. In small, tight-knit communities, reciprocal altruism builds trust and cooperation, creating a social environment where people feel secure knowing their acts of kindness will be reciprocated in times of need. Yet, altruism isn't always about expecting something in return. Some forms of altruism appear to be motivated purely by empathy. When we see someone in distress, our brain's empathy circuits activate, allowing us to feel the emotions of others. This emotional connection can drive us to help, not because we expect a reward, but because we genuinely want to alleviate someone else's suffering. Studies show that even young children who are not yet fully socialized demonstrate altruistic behaviors like sharing or comforting others, suggesting that empathy is a deeply ingrained human trait. Altruism can also be influenced by social norms and cultural values. In societies that emphasize cooperation, fairness, and social responsibility, individuals are more likely to engage in helping behaviors. Religious or moral beliefs often play a role, encouraging people to act selflessly in accordance with ethical principles or spiritual teachings. One fascinating aspect of altruism is that it often produces a sense of well-being for the person who helps. The helper's high is a term used to describe the positive emotional boost we experience after performing an altruistic act. This is linked to the brain's release of feel-good chemicals like dopamine and oxytocin, reinforcing the idea that helping others can be rewarding, even when it appears selfless. Balancing aggression and altruism. While aggression and altruism might seem like opposite forces, they both arise from the same deep-seated human drives. The need to survive, protect, and thrive can lead us to both compete and cooperate. What determines whether we act aggressively or altruistically in a given situation often depends on our social context, individual upbringing, and personal experiences. For example, someone who feels secure in their social and emotional life, and who has strong support networks, is more likely to act altruistically. On the other hand, someone who feels threatened, marginalized, or stressed may be more prone to aggressive behavior. The way we interpret situations, whether we see someone as a competitor or a collaborator, can greatly influence how we respond. Even in our closest relationships, we sometimes toggle between these two tendencies. Arguments with loved ones may escalate into aggressive words, but the same bond can motivate deep acts of kindness and care. Understanding when and why we switch between these behaviors can help us manage our emotions and interactions with others more effectively. The role of empathy in reducing aggression. One of the most powerful tools for reducing aggression and fostering altruism is empathy. Empathy allows us to step outside of ourselves and consider the emotions, needs, and perspectives of others. When we truly understand what someone else is feeling, it's harder to act aggressively toward them. In conflict situations, increasing empathy, by listening, understanding, and finding common ground, can transform hostility into cooperation. Empathy training is often used in conflict resolution programs and interventions for reducing aggression, particularly in schools, workplaces, and even prisons. Empathy also encourages altruism. When we are able to connect emotionally with others, we are more likely to feel compelled to help them. This is why stories of individuals in need, whether in our own communities or in global humanitarian crises, often spark waves of generosity and compassion. Understanding our dual nature. Aggression and altruism represent two sides of the same human coin. Both are natural tendencies shaped by our environment, experiences, and biology. While aggression often gets the spotlight due to its destructive nature, altruism plays an equally powerful role in fostering connection, cooperation, and societal well-being. By understanding the roots of both aggression and altruism, we can become more mindful of our own behavior and the choices we make in our interactions with others. When we cultivate empathy, embrace cooperation, and recognize the shared humanity in those around us, we can reduce harmful behaviors and build a more compassionate world. The balance between aggression and altruism isn't a fixed state but a dynamic part of the human experience, one we can learn to navigate with greater awareness and care. Chapter 7. Stereotypes, Prejudice, and Discrimination. The roots of bias and how it shapes social behavior. We all navigate a world filled with social categories, race, gender, age, nationality, that help us make sense of the people around us. While these categories can be useful shortcuts for understanding, they often lead to stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. These biases shape our interactions, whether we're aware of them or not, affecting everything from our personal relationships to social systems and institutions. Understanding stereotypes, mental shortcuts with consequences. At the heart of many biased behaviors are stereotypes, generalizations we make about people based on their group membership. Psychologically, stereotypes serve as cognitive shortcuts, helping us quickly process information about others. When we meet someone, especially in a brief or ambiguous situation, our brain relies on past experiences and societal messages to make sense of who they are. This can be helpful when we need to make quick judgments, but it can also be limiting and harmful. Stereotypes often oversimplify individuals, reducing them to broad, often inaccurate traits. For example, the assumption that someone of a particular gender or ethnicity will behave in a specific way can be not only incorrect but also unfair. The danger of stereotypes is that they create rigid expectations, leaving little room for individuality. They become problematic when they lead us to make judgments about others before we truly know them, preventing us from seeing people for who they are. These mental shortcuts are learned from various sources, family, media, culture, and are often reinforced throughout our lives. From childhood, we absorb messages about different groups of people, whether through direct teaching or through subtle cues from the world around us. Over time, these stereotypes can become ingrained in our thinking, influencing how we perceive and treat others, even if we believe we are open-minded. Prejudice, the emotional component. While stereotypes are cognitive, prejudice adds an emotional layer. Prejudice is a negative attitude or feeling towards someone based solely on their membership in a particular group. It's the emotional charge that gives stereotypes their power, turning neutral assumptions into harmful biases. Prejudice can range from mild discomfort around certain groups to strong dislike or hatred. It often stems from fear or a sense of threat, whether real or imagined. When we perceive someone as different from us, it can trigger anxiety or uncertainty, leading to negative emotions. Over time, these feelings can harden into prejudice, affecting not just how we think about individuals, but how we behave toward them. One of the most insidious aspects of prejudice is that it often operates below the surface of consciousness. We may believe we are fair-minded, but implicit biases, unconscious prejudices that influence our actions, can still affect our behavior. These biases can show up in subtle ways: avoiding eye contact with certain individuals, making assumptions about someone's abilities, or feeling uncomfortable in certain social situations. These small but significant moments accumulate, contributing to larger patterns of inequality and exclusion. Discrimination, actions based on bias. When stereotypes and prejudice are acted upon, they result in discrimination. Discrimination occurs when individuals or groups are treated unfairly or unjustly based on their membership in a particular group. Unlike prejudice, which is an internal attitude, discrimination is a behavior, a decision to exclude, mistreat, or disadvantage someone because of who they are. Discrimination can be overt or subtle. Overt discrimination is explicit and easy to recognize: a refusal to hire someone because of their race, gender, or religion, or denying someone access to services because of their sexual orientation. These types of actions are usually illegal in many parts of the world, but they still occur, often in covert or systemic ways. Subtle discrimination is harder to spot but just as harmful. It might show up in microaggressions, small, everyday slights or insults directed at marginalized groups. For example, assuming someone is less knowledgeable because of their accent, or asking intrusive questions about someone's cultural background in a way that feels othering. While these actions may seem minor, they can build up over time, creating environments where people from marginalized groups feel unwelcome or excluded. Discrimination doesn't only happen on an individual level, it can also be institutionalized. When entire systems, such as the legal system, education, or healthcare, disproportionately disadvantage certain groups, this is known as systemic discrimination. Often, this type of discrimination is not the result of conscious prejudice but is built into the very structures of society, affecting people's lives in profound ways. The impact of bias on society. The consequences of stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination are far-reaching. On an individual level, they limit opportunities, create stress, and damage self-esteem for those who are targeted. Being subject to constant bias, whether through overt discrimination or the daily drip of microaggressions, can lead to feelings of isolation, anxiety, and even depression. For society as a whole, bias reinforces divisions and perpetuates inequality. When certain groups are consistently disadvantaged, it becomes harder for them to access the resources and opportunities they need to thrive. This can create cycles of poverty, exclusion, and marginalization that are difficult to break. Bias also affects social cohesion. In a world where people are divided by prejudice and discrimination, trust erodes and conflict increases. Societies where bias is allowed to flourish tend to be more divided and less cooperative, as people retreat into their in-groups and view out-groups with suspicion or hostility. This polarization can have serious consequences, from political instability to social unrest. Overcoming bias. Despite the deep-rooted nature of stereotypes and prejudice, they are not immutable. Research shows that biases can be reduced through conscious effort and exposure to new experiences. One of the most effective ways to challenge stereotypes is through intergroup contact, meaningful interactions with people from different groups. When we engage with others on a personal level, it becomes harder to rely on stereotypes and easier to see people as individuals. Education also plays a critical role in overcoming bias. Learning about the history and experiences of marginalized groups can broaden our perspective and reduce ignorance. When we understand the systemic forces that perpetuate inequality, we are better equipped to recognize and challenge them. Developing empathy is another powerful tool for combating prejudice. When we put ourselves in someone else's shoes and truly try to understand their experience, it becomes much harder to hold on to negative emotions. Empathy breaks down the emotional walls that prejudice builds, allowing us to connect with others on a human level. Moreover, recognizing and addressing our own implicit biases is essential. While it can be uncomfortable to confront our own prejudices, acknowledging them is the first step toward change. By reflecting on our assumptions and behaviors, we can start to unlearn the biases we've absorbed from society and develop more inclusive, fair-minded attitudes toward a more inclusive society. Stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination are powerful forces that shape the way we interact with the world and with each other. They limit our ability to see others clearly and fairly, perpetuating inequality and division in society. However, by becoming more aware of our biases and working to overcome them, we can create a more inclusive and just world. Human behavior is not fixed, and neither are our attitudes. Through education, empathy, and meaningful engagement with others, we can challenge the harmful beliefs that divide us and build a society where everyone is treated with respect and dignity. Understanding the roots of bias is the first step in dismantling it, opening the door to deeper connections and a fairer, more compassionate world. Chapter 8: Group Dynamics and Decision-Making. How group settings change the way we think and act. Groups are a fundamental part of human life. From family units to social networks, from work teams to nations, we often find ourselves navigating various group dynamics. Being part of a group can provide support, identity, and shared purpose, but it can also change how we think and behave. The psychology of groups reveals that our decisions and actions are often different when we're with others compared to when we're alone. The power of group influence. When we enter a group setting, the rules of interaction shift. We may find ourselves influenced by the people around us in ways that we don't fully recognize. One of the most well-known phenomena related to group dynamics is conformity, the pressure to align our thoughts and behaviors with the group. This happens because, as social creatures, we are highly attuned to what others think and do. Whether we are aware of it or not, we tend to follow social norms to avoid standing out or risking rejection. In many cases, conformity helps maintain social harmony and cooperation. Imagine being in a meeting where everyone agrees on a decision, and you are the only one with reservations. The desire to fit in or avoid conflict can lead you to go along with the majority, even if you privately disagree. This is not just about following the crowd for the sake of it. The influence of the group can actually alter how we perceive reality, making us believe the group's conclusions are more valid than our own. However, conformity can sometimes lead to problematic outcomes. Groupthink, for instance, occurs when the desire for consensus in a group overrides critical thinking. In an effort to avoid conflict or speed up decision-making, groups may suppress dissenting opinions, leading to poor decisions. This has been seen in historical events where governments or organizations failed to adequately assess risks because group dynamics stifled debate or discouraged alternative viewpoints. Social roles and group identity. When we join a group, we often take on specific roles. These roles can shape our behavior, even in ways we don't anticipate. In work environments, for example, people may adopt the role of a leader, follower, or mediator based on the group's needs and their position within it. These roles come with expectations about how we should act, and often, we adjust our behavior to meet those expectations, whether or not they align with our personal preferences. One of the most striking examples of how group roles influence behavior comes from the famous Stanford prison experiment, conducted by psychologist Philip Zimbardo in the 1970s. In this study, college students were randomly assigned the roles of guards or prisoners in a mock prison setting. Shockingly, within days the participants began to fully embody their roles. The guards became authoritarian and even abusive, while the prisoners became submissive or rebellious. The experiment, though ethically controversial, demonstrated how easily social roles can lead to dramatic changes in behavior. Group identity is also a powerful force. When we identify strongly with a group, we tend to adopt the group's beliefs and values as our own. This can create a strong sense of belonging and loyalty, but it can also lead to an us versus them mentality, where the in-group, our group, is seen as superior and the out-group, other groups, is viewed with suspicion or hostility. This dynamic can play out in everything from sports rivalries to political affiliations, often leading to polarization and conflict. The influence of group size. The size of a group also has a profound impact on individual behavior. In smaller groups, individuals are more likely to feel accountable for their actions and are more likely to participate actively. This is why small teams in workplaces or close-knit communities often foster collaboration and a sense of responsibility. In larger groups, however, individuals may experience a phenomenon known as social loafing, where people exert less effort because they feel less individually accountable. In large teams, for example, someone might assume that their contributions won't be noticed or that others will pick up the slack. This can lead to decreased motivation and productivity. Another effect of large group settings is de-individuation, where people lose their sense of personal identity and responsibility, often behaving in ways they wouldn't on their own. Crowds, for instance, can foster impulsive and sometimes destructive behaviors because individuals feel anonymous and less accountable. This is why riots, mob violence, or even the rowdiness of a large sports crowd can escalate so quickly. The larger the group, the more diffuse responsibility becomes, leading people to act in ways they might later regret. Decision-making in groups. One of the most fascinating aspects of group dynamics is how group settings impact decision-making. Groups are often thought to make better decisions than individuals because they can draw on a wider range of perspectives and expertise. However, this is only true when the group fosters open discussion and critical thinking. Unfortunately, groups are often prone to polarization, where discussions lead to more extreme positions than individuals would take on their own. For example, in political discussions, a group of like-minded individuals may reinforce each other's views, leading the entire group to adopt a more radical stance than any one member initially held. This effect can be dangerous when it limits the range of options considered or when it alienates opposing viewpoints. On the other hand, diversity within groups can enhance decision-making. When groups are made up of individuals with different backgrounds, perspectives, and experiences, they are more likely to consider a wider range of solutions and avoid groupthink. However, this diversity needs to be actively managed. Without an inclusive environment, differing opinions can lead to tension and conflict rather than productive discussions. Leadership is a key factor in how groups make decisions. A strong leader can guide a group toward thoughtful, balanced choices by encouraging open dialogue and ensuring that all voices are heard. However, leaders who dominate discussions or who prioritize efficiency over thorough debate can stifle creativity and innovation. Cooperation and conflict. Groups are not just places where decisions are made, they are also where cooperation and conflict arise. Cooperation within a group can be incredibly powerful, allowing individuals to achieve goals that would be impossible on their own. This is why teams are essential in workplaces, sports, and communities. When group members work together toward a shared goal, they can accomplish far more than the sum of their individual efforts. But groups can also be breeding grounds for conflict. Differences in opinion, personality clashes, and competition for resources can all lead to tensions within a group. If these conflicts are not managed effectively, they can undermine the group's cohesion and productivity. However, conflict is not always destructive. When handled constructively, it can lead to growth and improvement, as differing viewpoints are aired and problems are solved collaboratively. Navigating group dynamics. Group dynamics are complex and deeply influential. They can push us toward greater cooperation and shared success or pull us into patterns of conformity, conflict, and polarization. By understanding the psychological forces at play in groups, we can become more aware of how they affect our behavior and decision-making. Whether in a work team, a social circle, or a community group, being mindful of group dynamics allows us to navigate them more effectively. We can challenge groupthink, encourage open dialogue, and foster an environment where diverse perspectives are valued. In doing so, we not only make better decisions but also build stronger, more cohesive groups capable of achieving great things together. Chapter 9: Emotions and Social Interactions. The role of emotions in guiding our behavior towards others. Emotions are the invisible threads that weave through our social interactions. They influence how we interpret events, how we relate to others, and how we make decisions. From joy to anger, pride to shame, emotions are a powerful force in shaping the dynamics of our relationships and interactions. But emotions don't just happen to us. They actively guide our behavior and play a key role in the social fabric of our lives. How emotions shape our social world. Our emotions are often triggered by our social environment. When we experience something as simple as a compliment or a criticism, an emotional response is activated. These responses, whether pleasant or painful, shape how we view the situation and the people involved. If someone praises us, we feel positive emotions such as happiness or pride, and this affects how we respond to them. Conversely, if someone insults us, feelings of anger or hurt may arise, altering the way we engage with that person. These emotional responses are not just fleeting reactions, they have deep social roots. Emotions provide us with vital information about how we are being treated and what we should do in response. For instance, fear alerts us to potential threats, while empathy drives us to help those in distress. Each emotion plays a role in maintaining the complex dance of social interaction. One of the most important functions of emotion is to signal our needs and desires to others. For example, when we feel sadness, it often serves as a social cue that we need comfort or support. In turn, those around us, recognizing our emotional state, may offer help or understanding. Similarly, displays of anger signal that boundaries have been crossed, prompting others to reconsider their actions. Emotions also act as a feedback loop. Our emotional responses not only influence how we interact with others but also shape how others respond to us. If someone sees us laughing and smiling, they may feel more inclined to engage with us in a positive way. On the other hand, if we're visibly upset, people might avoid us or try to placate us, based on the emotional signals we send out. Emotional contagion, the spread of feelings. One of the most fascinating aspects of emotions is how easily they can spread from person to person. This phenomenon, known as emotional contagion, refers to how emotions ripple through social groups. Have you ever noticed how a friend's laughter can lift your spirits, or how spending time with a stressed colleague can leave you feeling anxious? These are examples of how emotions can be contagious, influencing the mood of those around us. Emotional contagion often happens unconsciously. When we see someone smiling, we tend to mirror their facial expressions and, in doing so, start to feel some of the same positive emotions. This happens because of the mirror neurons in our brain, which are activated when we observe someone else's behavior. These neurons help us empathize and connect with others on an emotional level. However, emotional contagion can also spread negative feelings. In tense situations, one person's frustration can easily spill over into the rest of the group, amplifying the emotional intensity. This is why managing emotions in social settings is so important. Leaders, parents, and even friends play a critical role in regulating the emotional climate of a group, helping to diffuse negative emotions and promote positive ones. Empathy, understanding and sharing emotions. Empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person, is a cornerstone of emotional connection. It allows us to step into someone else's shoes, to imagine what they are experiencing emotionally, and to respond with care and compassion. Empathy is one of the most powerful tools for building trust and intimacy in relationships. There are two main types of empathy: cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. Cognitive empathy involves understanding another person's emotions intellectually, knowing how they feel and why. Emotional empathy goes deeper, involving actually feeling what the other person is feeling. Both types of empathy are essential for healthy relationships, but emotional empathy is especially powerful in creating deep bonds, as it allows us to resonate with others on a heartfelt level. Empathy doesn't just help us connect with others, it also has a profound impact on our behavior. When we empathize with someone in pain, we are more likely to offer help or comfort. Empathy drives us to be kinder, more patient, and more understanding in our social interactions. At the same time, empathy has its limits. In some cases, we may experience empathy fatigue or become overwhelmed by the emotions of others, particularly if we are exposed to too much suffering. This is a common issue in caregiving professions or for individuals who are constantly supporting others. Balancing empathy with emotional self-care is key to maintaining healthy boundaries. Managing our own emotions and social interactions. Just as emotions influence how we treat others, they also affect how we navigate our own social experiences. In any given situation, managing our emotions can be the difference between a constructive conversation and a heated argument, or between making a thoughtful decision and reacting impulsively. Emotional regulation, the ability to manage and control our emotional responses, is essential in maintaining positive social interactions. It involves recognizing our feelings, understanding why we feel the way we do, and choosing how to express those emotions appropriately. This doesn't mean suppressing or denying our emotions, but rather learning how to channel them in ways that serve us in our relationships. For example, in a moment of anger, instead of lashing out, we might take a deep breath and pause before responding. This brief moment of reflection can prevent the escalation of conflict and allow for a more thoughtful and productive dialogue. Similarly, when we feel overwhelmed by anxiety or stress, taking a step back and practicing mindfulness can help us regain emotional balance, making it easier to engage with others in a calm and clear-headed manner. Learning how to manage our emotions is particularly important in difficult social situations, such as arguments, disagreements, or high-pressure environments. By staying aware of our emotional triggers and practicing emotional regulation, we can navigate these situations more effectively, keeping our relationships intact and reducing unnecessary tension. The role of positive emotions. While negative emotions like anger, fear, or sadness often demand our attention, positive emotions play an equally important role in social interactions. Feelings of joy, gratitude, pride, and love foster connection, cooperation, and goodwill. Positive emotions help build and strengthen relationships, creating a sense of mutual appreciation and warmth. When we experience positive emotions, we are more likely to engage in pro-social behaviors, acts of kindness, generosity, and cooperation. Studies have shown that people in a positive mood are more likely to help others, share resources, and collaborate effectively. Positive emotions also encourage creativity and open-mindedness, making us more flexible in our thinking and more receptive to new ideas. Moreover, the broaden and build theory proposed by psychologist Barbara Fredrickson suggests that positive emotions not only make us feel good in the moment but also help us build lasting resources for the future. By fostering stronger social connections, enhancing our problem-solving abilities, and improving our overall well-being, positive emotions contribute to long-term resilience and success in both personal and social contexts. The emotional underpinnings of social life. Emotions are the undercurrent of our social interactions, shaping how we connect, communicate, and relate to others. Whether it's the warmth of empathy, the tension of anger, or the joy of shared laughter, emotions guide our behavior and influence the way we experience the social world. Understanding the role of emotions in social interactions allows us to be more mindful of how we express our feelings and how we respond to others. By cultivating emotional awareness, empathy, and emotional regulation, we can navigate our relationships with greater skill, fostering deeper connections and more harmonious interactions. At their core, emotions are not something to be controlled or avoided, they are to be understood and embraced as a vital part of the human experience. When we learn to work with our emotions rather than against them, we unlock the full potential of our social bonds, creating a richer and more fulfilling social life. Chapter 10. Social Psychology in Everyday Life. Applying social psychology to improve personal and professional relationships. Social psychology is not just a field of academic study, it's a practical guide to understanding the human experience. Every day we encounter situations where the principles of social psychology influence our behavior, whether we're aware of it or not. From our friendships and family dynamics to interactions at work or even with strangers, these principles are constantly at play. Learning to recognize and apply these insights can help us navigate life's challenges more effectively, improve our relationships, and foster more positive environments. Understanding first impressions. One of the most common and immediate ways social psychology affects our daily lives is through first impressions. We make snap judgments about others in seconds, and these impressions often have lasting consequences. Whether we're meeting a new colleague, joining a new social group, or even meeting someone online, the first few moments of interaction set the tone. The halo effect, the tendency to let one positive trait influence our overall perception, can cause us to make broad judgments based on limited information. If someone is friendly and smiles a lot, we might assume they are also competent and trustworthy. Conversely, if someone seems nervous or shy, we might incorrectly conclude they lack confidence or skill. Being aware of this tendency allows us to check ourselves, giving people more time and space to show their true selves. Recognizing how quickly we form these impressions can help us be more mindful about giving others a fair chance. In the workplace, for example, avoiding snap judgments can lead to more balanced teamwork and collaboration. In social settings, withholding immediate judgment allows us to develop deeper connections based on substance rather than assumptions. The role of social influence at work. In the professional world, social influence is a powerful force that shapes workplace culture, decision-making, and leadership dynamics. The need to conform to group norms often drives behavior at work, whether it's adhering to a company's culture or following the unspoken rules of team interactions. Understanding how social influence works can help us navigate these environments with more awareness and confidence. For example, in meetings or collaborative projects, we often face groupthink, where the desire for harmony or consensus overrides critical thinking. Recognizing the signs of groupthink, like when dissenting opinions are silenced or when there is pressure to agree, can help us create space for more diverse viewpoints. By encouraging open dialogue and questioning assumptions, we can foster healthier decision-making processes. Additionally, social facilitation, the phenomenon where people perform differently when others are watching, plays a role in workplace performance. Some people thrive under observation while others may feel anxious or pressured. Being aware of this dynamic allows leaders to create supportive environments where everyone can contribute their best work, whether in public presentations or in quieter, one-on-one settings. Navigating relationships through empathy. In our personal lives, empathy is one of the most powerful tools we have for maintaining strong, healthy relationships. Social psychology shows us that being able to step into someone else's shoes, to truly understand their emotions and perspectives, is key to resolving conflicts, building trust, and fostering intimacy. Whether in romantic relationships, friendships, or family dynamics, practicing active listening is essential. Often, when we listen to others, we are preparing our own response rather than fully absorbing what the other person is saying. Active listening involves paying full attention, acknowledging the other person's feelings, and responding in a way that shows genuine understanding. This practice not only deepens our connections but also reduces misunderstandings and miscommunications. In moments of conflict, empathy allows us to shift from a defensive stance to one of understanding. Instead of focusing on who is right or wrong, we can explore the underlying emotions and motivations driving the disagreement. By approaching conflicts with curiosity and compassion, rather than blame or anger, we create opportunities for resolution and growth. Building positive social networks. Our social networks, both online and offline, are central to our well-being. The people we surround ourselves with influence our behavior, our attitudes, and even our mental health. Social psychology teaches us about the importance of social support, the ways in which our relationships help buffer against stress, improve our mood, and provide a sense of belonging. However, not all social networks are equally beneficial. Some relationships can drain our energy, foster negativity, or create stress. By understanding the principles of reciprocity and social exchange theory, we can become more intentional about the relationships we cultivate. Reciprocity suggests that relationships thrive when there is a balance of give and take, where both parties feel valued and supported. Social exchange theory adds that we tend to maintain relationships where the benefits outweigh the costs, both emotionally and practically. In building positive social networks, it's important to focus on quality rather than quantity. Surrounding ourselves with a few supportive, understanding individuals often leads to greater happiness and fulfillment than maintaining a large network of superficial connections. Social media, while expanding our reach, can sometimes foster more shallow interactions, so it's important to balance digital engagement with meaningful face-to-face interactions. The power of gratitude in social interactions. Gratitude is a simple yet profound tool for improving social interactions and relationships. Expressing gratitude not only strengthens bonds but also shifts our mindset from scarcity to abundance. When we take the time to acknowledge and appreciate the kindness or support we receive from others, we reinforce positive behavior and deepen our connections. Studies show that people who practice gratitude tend to experience better mental health, greater relationship satisfaction, and more optimism. By incorporating small acts of gratitude into our daily lives, whether through a thank you note, a verbal acknowledgement, or a thoughtful gesture, we can create a ripple effect of positivity in our relationships. In the workplace, gratitude can improve team morale and cooperation. A simple thank you for a job well done can go a long way in making colleagues feel valued and motivated. In personal relationships, regularly expressing gratitude can transform routine interactions into moments of warmth and connection, reminding us of the support systems we often take for granted. Creating inclusive environments. One of the most pressing challenges in modern society is creating inclusive environments where everyone feels respected and valued, regardless of their background or identity. Social psychology provides insights into how we can challenge bias, promote diversity, and build inclusive communities. An important step is becoming aware of our own unconscious biases. Those automatic judgments we make about people based on stereotypes or preconceived notions. By acknowledging that we all have biases, we can begin the process of challenging and overcoming them. In social and professional settings, promoting inclusive dialogue, where diverse perspectives are not only welcomed but actively encouraged, fosters an environment of respect and collaboration. Creating inclusive environments also involves stepping beyond mere tolerance and moving toward genuine understanding and appreciation of differences. Whether in the workplace, at school, or in our communities, fostering inclusivity means taking deliberate actions to ensure that everyone has a seat at the table and feels empowered to contribute. Applying social psychology for a better life. Social psychology is not just a collection of theories, it's a guide to navigating the complexities of everyday life. By understanding how social influence, emotions, and interpersonal dynamics shape our behavior, we can make more conscious choices in how we interact with others. Whether at work, in our personal relationships, or within broader communities, applying these principles can lead to more fulfilling and harmonious interactions. At its core, social psychology reminds us of our shared humanity. By cultivating empathy, practicing gratitude, and creating inclusive environments, we can foster stronger connections and contribute to a more compassionate world. The insights gained from social psychology are not only tools for personal growth but also a pathway toward a more connected, cooperative, and supportive society. Conclusion: reflecting on social behavior, insights for a better society. Social psychology provides a powerful lens through which we can understand why we act the way we do, and how our behaviors are influenced by the social world around us. It reveals that much of our actions, whether we conform, lead, love, help, or hurt, are shaped by forces we often do not see but constantly feel. These forces include the expectations of the groups we belong to, the emotional currents that flow through our interactions, and the biases that creep into our thinking, often without our awareness. Understanding these hidden dynamics offers us a choice: to continue acting unconsciously, driven by societal forces, or to step back, reflect, and make more mindful decisions in our interactions. By grasping how social influences work, we can improve our personal lives, professional relationships, and the broader communities we belong to. The role of awareness in personal growth. One of the key takeaways from social psychology is that awareness is the first step toward change. When we understand how we are shaped by the social forces around us, whether through peer pressure, conformity, or unconscious bias, we gain the power to take control over our actions. Instead of reacting automatically to situations, we can begin to make intentional choices that reflect our true values and beliefs. For example, recognizing the influence of groupthink in decision-making helps us encourage more open and diverse discussions in teams. Understanding the roots of aggression allows us to pause before acting out in anger and consider a more empathetic approach. Knowing how easily we stereotype others helps us challenge our assumptions and see people as individuals rather than representatives of a group. This self-awareness doesn't just improve our individual lives, it also enhances our relationships. By being more mindful of how we communicate, how we interpret others' emotions, and how we navigate conflicts, we create stronger, more resilient connections. We become more empathetic, less reactive, and more open to understanding others' perspectives. Building a more compassionate society. On a societal level, social psychology offers a roadmap for creating more compassionate and inclusive communities. When we understand the mechanisms behind prejudice and discrimination, we can begin to dismantle these harmful structures, both in ourselves and in the systems we live within. Recognizing that biases are often learned and unconscious doesn't excuse them, but it does provide a starting point for change. By fostering environments where diversity is not just tolerated but celebrated, we create spaces where people from different backgrounds can contribute their unique perspectives and strengths. In workplaces, schools, and communities, inclusion leads to innovation, creativity, and stronger social bonds. When we acknowledge and challenge inequality, whether it's based on race, gender, socioeconomic status, or other factors, we take steps toward a fairer and more just society. Moreover, understanding the dynamics of social influence reminds us of our shared responsibility in shaping the world around us. Our behavior doesn't just impact us, it influences others, rippling outward into our communities. Small acts of kindness, moments of empathy, and efforts to challenge bias can create positive social change, one interaction at a time. The importance of emotional intelligence. At the heart of much of our social behavior is emotion. Emotions guide our decisions, color our interactions, and influence how we respond to others. Developing emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our emotions and the emotions of others, is crucial for improving both our personal well-being and our social relationships. In moments of conflict or stress, emotional intelligence helps us pause, reflect, and respond rather than react. In moments of connection and joy, it allows us to fully engage with others, building deeper bonds. Whether in our closest relationships or in casual encounters, emotional intelligence fosters more positive, constructive interactions. Applying social psychology for the future. The insights of social psychology are not just abstract theories, they are practical tools that can be applied in everyday life. Whether we're managing a team at work, navigating family dynamics, building friendships, or participating in our communities, these principles offer guidance for making better choices and improving our interactions with others. At its core, social psychology reminds us that we are not isolated individuals but part of a vast social network. Our actions matter not only for ourselves but for those around us. By understanding how our behavior is shaped and how we can influence others positively, we contribute to a more cooperative, compassionate, and fair society. As we move forward, the challenge is to remain mindful of the invisible forces that shape us, to question our automatic reactions, and to strive for a deeper understanding of ourselves and others. By doing so, we create a world where empathy, respect, and cooperation are the guiding principles of our social interactions. Ultimately, the lessons of social psychology empower us to build a better life, not just for ourselves but for everyone we interact with. In doing so, we take steps toward creating a world where understanding, compassion, and positive social change become the norm rather than the exception. Final thoughts. The journey through social psychology opens a window into human nature, revealing both the challenges and the possibilities of our social world. By applying these insights to our daily lives, we can foster more meaningful relationships, make more thoughtful decisions, and contribute to a society that values inclusivity, empathy, and cooperation. The power to create positive social change lies in our understanding and in our actions.